improving Africa's access and quality of water for the future. I will let them introduce themselves, but I wanted to let you all know there will be time for question and answers at the end. If you have a question that comes up for you during the course of the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, there will also be time for you at the end to unmute yourself and just to ask verbally. So I will turn it over to our group and take it away.
I think something happened to Zach's mic. Hold on.
We'll give Zach a minute to try to fix the technical difficulty. All right, looks like Zach has returned.
Okay, gotta love Zoom. All right, so good morning, everyone. We're doing water and sanitation, focusing in on Kenya. My name's Zach. Some of our other group members are Abby, Michaela, and Ryan and Deborah. So imagine this. Anthony is a citizen of Kenya that lives in a small village. In this village, water lines are difficult to gain access to, and Anthony spends a few hours every day gathering water from nearby ponds to bring back to his family. His dream is to go to college, but doesn't look promising because of the water crisis. After getting a water storage tank for his home, with help from non-for-profit organizations dedicated to helping the water crisis, his family had an improved water source right at their home. Anthony no longer needs to spend time gathering water for his family because they have access to clean water now. Implementing solutions like this one will help give more families like Anthony's a better chance to have a quality life without having to focus on where to get clean water. Water is an essential nutrient for all forms of life. It covers 71% of the globe, but there's still an estimated 790 million people who do not have access to clean water. There are two types of water scarcity that affect access around the world. Those are physical water scarcity and economic water scarcity. Physical water scarcity occurs in places where droughts are common, like the Sahara Desert, where economic water scarcity occurs in places where water resources are available, but they're not properly managed. This map here shows a global view on the regions and what type of water scarcity that they have, or if they have one at all. We can see that the black arrow is pointing to the yellow region that has a economic water scarcity. And we can see that the black arrows is also focusing in on Kenya, which we are focusing on. So when water resources are not properly managed, it is detrimental to the health of those who live in the area. And the water crisis has been a problem around the world for many years, but one of the most impacted areas is Africa. Many countries in Africa struggle to access to clean drinking water. And one of the most impacted countries is Kenya. So 16 million Kenyans out of 50 million are forced to use unsafe drinking sources every day due to several factors that mainly impact those living in rural areas. Households in cities like Nairobi are able to connect to pipe water infrastructures for only $4.46 a month, while rural households need to pay $38 a month for the same water supply. 66% of Kenyans live on a $3.20 a day, which is just under $100 a month. Even if households could afford to pay the $38 a month for water, the pipes are unreliable due to the distance from the main water infrastructure. The pipes connecting to rural households often do not produce constant flow of water, leading many Kenyans to rely on wells, rainwater, and rivers while still paying the $38 a month for water that is not guaranteed. In terms of climate, Kenya has 2 rainy seasons. The long rains are from late April to early June, and the short rains occur sporadically between November, December, and December and March. So there are different types of rain catching devices like cisterns and rain barrels in Kenya. Rain barrels are basic rain catching devices, but they do not filter the rainwater in any way according to the CDC. Cisterns, while common, require a lot of maintenance. It requires them to be constantly filtered, disinfected, and tested. So opting out of solutions like this means that family members will need to get water for the households themselves, thus taking away job and education opportunities that families in urban settings do not have to worry about. On average, a collective 200 million hours are spent walking to collect water that is detrimental to the health of anyone who consumes it. Since children's immune systems are still developing, water-related illnesses impact them more severely than adults. Illnesses contracted from contaminated water kill an estimated 3.4 million people worldwide. So most countries in this area, including Kenya, were not going to meet the worldwide Millennium Development Drinking Water Goal in 2010. So this figure 1 here shows Kenya in the orange and surrounding areas of Kenya in orange. And this is from 2010, saying that they are not on track to meet the water crisis goals, as well as they haven't been on track for many years before this and even after. So since Kenya is still developing, there are many issues with the water due to the fact that they are attempting to solve another important issue at the same time. In order to attempt to solve the water crisis and put an end to it, there have been quite a few solutions used to make some progress with this. One of the first solutions that has been used in Kenya is water desalination. So water desalination uses energy plants. It uses reverse osmosis to remove impurities from the water. Some of the issues with this is that it negatively affects the environment and the human health. It fails to remove all the chemicals. This is a very expensive process, and water turns into a commodity because of this process. So there has been a desalination plant in Kenya that has been recently built by a non-for-profit organization called Give Power. It uses solar energy to power the facility and the processes. Although it is still very expensive, and if there is less sunlight, the plant is basically ineffective because it's powered by sunlight. And not much sunlight, this will lead to not being able to provide as much clean drinking water in those areas. Energy that is released from these plants also harm the environment through global warming, leading to droughts and more shortages. So this right here is how reverse osmosis works, and desalination uses reverse osmosis to clean the water. So it takes salt water and it comes in through a pipe, and it's applied pressure, and there is a membrane which acts as a filter. The filter stops the contaminants and then exits is fresh, clean drinking water.
Another solution that's been attempted in Kenya have been water wells. So one of the solutions that they've tried for in Kenya particularly have been a nonprofit organization known as the Samburu Project, which was started locally by a group of women in 2005. And since that time, they've placed over 80 wells throughout Kenya. And the wells that they built are considered shallow wells, though, as they're only dug around like 250 feet deep, and they provide water for around like 1,000 people villages. The founders of this really help local villages apply for grants and government funding to afford one of these wells in the village. So each well needs around $20,000 of funding before they can even start breaking ground on that. So this is one of the reasons this solution had problems, because of just the funding, how far the wells could go down, and how many people they just provided water for as a whole. And most wells are a lot cheaper than this and also go deeper to get more water. The amount of people these wells provided water for was not enough compared to the entire population of Kenya. Just created problems with how many they could just really provide water for. So our solution attempts to solve the water crisis and work through problems like these ones. There are many types of wells around the world, that can be used according to the United States Department of the Interior. And these ones are just groundwater or dug/bored wells. And these ones are ones that are dug completely by hand with a shovel or a pick. So these are just the most basic kind of wells. And then the next one is driven wells, which is where you drive a small diameter pipe into the ground in order to get water. And then the last one is drilled wells. And these ones are the most common ones today. And this is where rotary drill bits are used to dig through rock and smash into pieces in order to get really far down into the ground, because these can be drilled more than 1,000 feet deep, so they can get access to the best water. What wells do is they gather water from the earth with a pump that carries the water up the well. And this solution has been utilized in many different areas around the world just because of how many types of wells there are that can be used in different areas. Benefits of just wells overall are just that it can be easily implemented anywhere according to the water project. Like I was just saying, there are many different types of wells that make it likely that one can work in one of the areas that needs it. So just that it can be easily implemented in any place that makes it easy to just have a well that can work somewhere. And then it's also very sustainable because it only needs to be built once and then you can use the well repeatedly. And there's also no advanced technology needed to build the well, and you also don't need advanced energy or methods with energy to gather the water. Then wells also are good at preventing bacterial infection because the materials that you use to build it are casings, and those are good at just preventing any contaminants from getting into the water during the whole process when it gathers it. There are quite a few drawbacks to the solution though. Overall, just like the cost for ones to provide the cleanest water, because to dig those deeper wells, the drilled ones, it requires a lot of money to build according to the water project. And being in that we're targeting rural areas, they may not have the money to make this solution work because just they're primarily poor and they don't have the financial resources to fund many wells. And then even though we just said there's clean water provides the wells do, there's just a lack of it if the well doesn't go deep enough. So even though it's kind of unlikely, there's still a chance that the water can be infected with dangerous chemicals according to the water project. And then there's also drought effects according to the United States Department of the Interior, because if one of these occurs, the well is basically ineffective and another solution needs to be looked for. So this could lead to an increase in cost to try to find a different solution. So there needs to be an effective solution in place that seeks to put an end to the water crisis for the long term by working around or through these drawbacks we just mentioned. So the solution we're proposing to make progress with the issues of water scarcity and quality is a water catchment and harvesting system. So what this does is that there are tanks and pumps that catch rainwater through the pipes, and then pipes will run from these rain gutters to protect the water from dangerous contaminants, and this will purify the rainwater for daily needs. So there will be a sump pump and a washout pipe as well that will be used to remove any other harmful contaminants, and then there will also be chemicals used to kill any remaining infectious agents in the water. And then flocculation and biofilm skimming will also be used in order to remove bacteria, any organic materials, or chemicals in the water by binding the particles together before they get filtered out of the tank. So this will prevent them from being filtered out of the tank with water before they go into the storage. So if this solution can work in rural and poor areas, we're confident that can work in other areas. And this is just a diagram to show how the whole catchment system works, or just how it looks. So when it goes into the gutter on the house, it'll go down, and then when it goes into the tank, that's where all the whole processes will occur to remove any of the dangerous particles. And then before it goes into storage, that'll be where the flocculation and biofilm skimming occurs to just remove anything else that may have been left over before it goes all the way into the storage of the water. The cost of creating water catchment systems and implementing them are very expensive because the cost of building a wet system to collect rain is estimated to be between $8,000 and $15,000 according to Fixer.com. So the big thing with this is that there's just a lot of materials to build it, which raises the prices because the materials necessary to construct an RO filtration system, a conveyance system, a water storage system, and a collection system. So there are many materials that are also not necessary to include with this system, but are kind of necessary or important to include because they make the water safe to drink. And these include materials such as gutter outlets, downspout screens, a tank gauge, a pump, and just many different components. And since as much rainwater as possible is going to need to be collected, we're going to need to build the largest systems, I guess, with the best materials. So the solution's really key and better than the other ones that we talked about before because it's more accessible to anybody, and because it's more affordable and it's easy to implement anywhere. So the funding that we have is really going to help with this, just with providing it to a lot of different areas. And then it also provides cleaner water because there's no issues with the process of removing contaminated particles. And it's also not as time consuming. So because the water that we collect can be stored for later use if it's not needed at the current time. And it just goes through the whole process quickly. So then these benefits are key to just making the solution to upgrade over ones that have been previously attempted. So to make sure our solutions have the best chance of succeeding, they need to be implemented in areas that need to make progress and gain better access to it and quality of water. So for the rainwater catchment system, the areas we're deciding to implement the solution in are just rural and poor communities because they deal with the most water conservation and sanitation problems as a whole. because the citizens of those countries, or just the rural areas in them, need to walk long distances to get water. And then there's also the lack of rainfall there, so there's a lot more droughts occurring there. And the location also affects their sanitation just because they don't have the access to the clean water to help with that. So, and then because of the rain stuff and how it doesn't rain a lot, we're going to need to gather as much rain as possible when it does rain, just because it doesn't rain a whole lot there outside of that 2-month rainy season. And then the citizens won't need to walk long distances to get water, like we were just stating. So it's going to be a long-term process in these rural and poor communities because the greater need for water there. So it's just going to be key in these rural and poor areas. So for our solutions to work, though, we're going to need assistance from other organizations that have been involved with finding solutions to the water crisis, because it's going to be difficult to implement these solutions and ensure we have the resources to make progress with solving the water crisis without them. And these organizations are the World Health Organization, other nonprofit water crisis aid organizations such as WaterAid.org or H2O for Life. And then we're also going to need help from the federal government from the country. So this is going to help with just fundraising and creating more pipes and tanks and just educating people about the water crisis to raise awareness. That's just the whole fundraising part and just getting funds help from them. Then outreach is going to be key here with their help, because it's going to ensure that people from around the world understand why the water crisis is a problem and how our solutions are working to end this problem. We want to make people more aware of that just from around the world and also in Kenya primarily. So this is going to help us put our solution in the best possible position to make progress with ending the water crisis. With our education plan as a whole, what we're going to try to do is document the progress of our solutions and use this information to educate the public about them. And we want to make make the people in Kenya and just also around the world see that our solutions are working and get them to either donate some money to it to make these more possible in more areas, or adopt them for their own use if they want to. So just to reiterate, we're going to focus on just how the solutions are helping Kenya and why the world should care about this issue in Africa and just around the world, because our goal is going to be to persuade others to care and get them involved with ending the water crisis, because it's important just to persuade the people in Kenya and around the world why they need to get involved, and just to get them to buy into the solution and either donate to the cause, educate others, or just get the other government from other countries to adopt our solutions and use them just in different areas.
So in order to get our solution fully on their feet and in working condition to make progress in Kenya, there are many steps that we have to take in order to get there, which include grant writing to the WaterAid or other crisis organizations I'll be asking to help with our funds, and the national government of Kenya to help pass our proposal to implement this solution, educating people about the crisis to get more involved, and getting supplies for the system, and then building these systems for use in Kenya. So in years 1 through 5, we plan to write to multiple organizations that are involved with finding solutions to the water crisis to ask for their help to fund these solutions. In addition to this, we will also be working our solution so it can be implemented and educate people on the crisis so they can understand with ending this crisis. Step of these years is to begin to explain to these rural communities of Kenya our solution and how this will help them have clean water, more access to it, and better sanitation practices. In years 6 through 10, we'll be working towards getting the materials for the solution in order to build the infrastructure to make them work in the rural communities. In years 11 through 15, we plan to implement the solution in other areas if it makes good progress over the previous years. However, it requires more time and continue to work on them until they are more effective. So as we progress with our solutions, there are some barriers that are in our way for making these work. And these barriers include the funding and costs of this system, the energy that's actually used to clean the water, the unpredictable rainfall that happens in Kenya, actually storing the water, consuming the water, maintaining the system, public trust, and tracking the data. And our ways around each of these barriers is for funding. We will plan to get donations and other sources of funding from different organizations to make sure there's enough money to actually build the systems, which will also allow us to have have resources for the solution. The energy, however, there is energy, but there is some minor use as to the pumps and the flocculation and biofilming skimming. There's little energy used. The unpredictable rainfall. So there's only 2 months of rainfall, and that can impact how much water is collected and how much they can consume at the time. with storing the water, we have to have large tanks that can hold all of the water, so they have it outside of the rainfall period. The water has to be tested to make sure there's no chemicals after the process. Maintaining the solution. We have to make sure the materials are in adequate condition to keep the water safe and clean before it's used to monitor them. Public trust. The trust of these communities must be granted to us by their own volition, and in order to allow us to work alongside them in order to accomplish the shared goal of implementing our innovation. And then tracking the data. The government will have employees that will track how much water is gathered during the rain seasons, how the water systems are working within these communities, how many people have actual access to the solution in the rural areas of the communities, and the amount of people that still go to the hospital after we implement our solutions. We want to make sure that the citizens have fully clean water, plenty of it, and are staying healthy.
The lack of water access is a big issue in Kenya, and the solution will help the country get the safe water they need and consume. The World Health Organization and nonprofit organizations are dedicated to raising funds for water conservation and quality, and the federal government from Kenya is raising funds for the creation of more tanks and educating others about our solutions and the goal. This is a long-term solution, but it will have a major impact on the access and quality when the solutions are implemented and become effective. Stories posted like Anthony's family about someone having access to clean water and a better life? Or do we want to see more stories about millions more people dying because they could not get access to it? Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Great. Thank you very much to our group. I see one question in the chat. We'll start with that one. And then again, a reminder to folks, please go ahead and enter questions in the chat and we will put them to the group. So the question that we've received so far, what will be the capacity for water storage? Is it possible to store enough water for needs?
I can take this one, but yeah, when I was doing research, there are a lot of tanks that can hold a lot of water. So I just forgot to address this earlier, but yeah, what we're gonna try to do is like, it could go like really just up to as much from like 1,000 gallons to, I don't know, it could like, there was just a whole different amount of limits on how much we can store at a time. So how much we can store really isn't much of a concern, but let's see. I don't know if I really answered that, but basically we can store enough water for what we need. So that's not an issue, but like we're looking to at least get over like 1,000 gallon tank or something like that, pretty close to that, or even any higher than that. But yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but yeah, it's kind of.
Other questions for the group?
I have one question. I am wondering if people from local communities could actually do the maintenance, even in the building and the testing, since government workers would not sort of be invested in that small community, but the members of that small community would have an interest in having clean water. So do you think that all this work of maintenance, building, and testing could be done possibly by people from the local community? Would it be simple enough for everybody to do it?
Yes,
Okay, you go, Abby.
we believe that initially the government workers can kind of come down and demonstrate to the communities and provide them with the materials they need, do a demonstration, and maybe like once every couple of months they'll come in to just check to make sure that they still have enough materials to continue testing, as well as the testing is working and they're able to continue getting the clean water from our source.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So we have a follow-up question about the water storage. Do you have an idea of how much water a typical family might consume in a day or a week, which might influence how many of these systems you need or how big the storage should be?
I can take this one again, but yeah, when I was looking at just research from the average African family, they use about like 5 gallons of water per day, but when we're looking at the whole village wise, like that's why we're probably going to need more for that. So yeah, that's how much, like just for a day, for a week, like I guess, I mean, yeah, but that's just for the day, but yeah.
Okay, more questions for the group? Oh, Professor Woods, for some reason you are still muted.
Of course. My question was, thank you, was about effects that this might have on groundwater and what might happen environmentally. Is this water that sort of needs to go into the mains, or would this affect that balance in any way?
I guess who wants to take this one? Because I feel like I've just been talking a lot.
So I guess, are you asking like if our catchment devices would take away from other resources that are there to affect?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, so currently they do have like cisterns and rainwater tanks there. So they collect from the rainwater just like we would be doing. The only difference is though is that they don't have the materials right there. So to filter them, there's no filtering process. So that's why they use like solar disinfection to put it out in the sun and clean it that way. So they just catch water there. So we would just be bringing a improved solution. So we would still be collecting the rainwater there, still being using that process, but doing a disinfection process to have clean water right there. So it'd be one step instead of carrying out different steps to try to solve the same process.
Thank you.
Great. I think we probably have time for one more question if anyone has one. Okay. And if not, I hope that you will join me in thanking our group, Zach, Abby, Ryan, Deborah, and Michaela for their presentation. Thank you all. Thank you all for attending and for your questions as well. Everybody have a good lunch period. And again, I encourage you to join some of the other Catalyst presentations this afternoon. Thanks.